Alright, you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and start going through the notes on the PowerPoint. I'm just going to make videos for each of the days that I'm asking you to look at the slides. So once again, you should have your Unit 8's notes packet, and you can use that to go hand in hand with what we talk about in the slides. Okay. So today being Wednesday, I've asked you to look through slides 1 through 13. So this video is going to cover that information. All right. So once again, this is just a little introductory to one of the famous serial killers that was actually never caught. So Jack the Ripper, it tells you on this headline here, claims the 5th victim, woman brutality, hacked to death. Now, I am going to let you guys take a chance where you can open up this case study. This lady dedicated a large portion of her career to studying Jack the Ripper, and it is fascinating at what she was able to come up with. So I'm going to pull this up for just a quick second, and we can look at it. So it just gives you an idea. Like we said, this is late 1800s, and it just talks about, one, the process that she goes through, diving into his psychology and diving into what led him to do what he did, the geographical area that he focused on, why he targeted women. So it's really, this case study encompasses everything that you're going to be learning about in this unit. So this just first off just talks about the evidence that was not there. Like if you look down here at the bottom, they didn't have fingerprints, there was no blood groups, there wasn't blood types. And so it was really hard. They were just, Sherlock Holmes and the idea of investigating was out there, but there wasn't a lot of evidence that was left behind that they were able to use to try to catch this guy. So Laura Richards, she's the one that came up with this case study, and like you can see here, she's a behavioral psychologist, and she spent a large majority of her time studying him. So here's the map of the areas of the locations of the victims. First victim, second, kind of how he bounced around, third victim. So you can kind of look through the geographical profile. Where did he do his hunting? As you can see, he wasn't going from one little country area to another. He really geographically stayed within these streets, this little village, right? So I want you just to kind of skim through this. I know it can be fairly large, but it really just talks about the process that she went through and all the information that she found on him. Here it talks about each victim, what happened to them, how they were taken. And like I said, it's pretty graphic, so just heads up there. Now, Jack the Ripper is definitely a serial killer that you could use. You can use this case study to find information out about him. So once again, you can kind of get an idea where it tells you that geographical profile of what streets he liked to work on. And if you look at it, it's pretty interesting. You've got all these stars, and it would lead you to believe that Jack the Ripper probably lived in a location here, and he just hunted close to home, but never where his location was. So they had a hunch that's where it happened. Once again, so I'm going to let you kind of just rummage through this. After you've had a chance to do that, then this is where I want you to kind of just go through these series of questions and thoughts. How did Richards investigate? And so you can see here where she researched the crime scenes. She actually went to the crime scene. She looked. She tried to put herself in that state of mind. Like we said, that geographical profiling. Where were the victims at geographically? Is there some way we can pinpoint how he's picking his targets based on a set of coordinates? They were able to run a DNA test much further later on in life, and kind of talk about that. Ripper's face. Oh, oops. Okay, so what did she discover about Jack the Ripper? So this is all the information based off of her research that she was able to come up with. Now, we say like a high degree of self-control, if you think about it, to mutilate another human being, knowing that they are screaming inflicting pain, fear. I mean, he was meticulous, he was slow, he was methodical. So that lets you know, I mean, he didn't just lash out and stab a victim 40, 50 times and then leave the body to lay there. I mean, he was pretty skilled and purposeful in what he did. So just a few things looking here. Like we said, possible surgeon. He would kill to cut up his victims. Cannibalistic. Oh, geez, sorry, went too far. It leads him to believe where he could have been a local man based on where he hunted. And so just things I want you to think about. But first, I would take a chance to kind of look through that case study. Okay. All right, here's just some basic vocab. I could guarantee that you will see these items on my test. Understanding that if you have had anatomy or if you remember back to basic biology, I mean, I would hope that cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem is items that you would recognize. I'll take you through the dura mater, pia mater, arachnoid mater. That is just tissue that surrounds your brain between your skull, your hard skull, and your soft brain tissue. Anyways, we'll kind of get through all these items. All right. Okay, so let's just dive into first. Let's talk about what the cerebrum is. So the cerebrum, this is the large portion of the brain. Okay, this is known as the cerebrum. Now this bottom piece right here, that's your cerebellum. Okay, your cerebellum is usually something you're most familiar with. It's your balance, it's your coordination. And then this yellow portion is known as the brainstem. Now obviously if this brainstem gets severed or cut, you're dead. This brainstem is like the interstate. It's the highway. It's where every single electric nerve impulse information is relayed to the body and back to the brain. So this is an extremely important part of the brain as far as controlling what's happening in the body. Now the cerebrum, it is broken up into 4 lobes, and we'll go through what each of those lobes are in the next PowerPoint. So in general, this cerebrum has some very important functions. Okay, if you look in here, biggest thing is determining your intelligence, your personality, how you think. So intelligence, personality, and how you think. Now I want you to take these 3 and go to your serial killer. Were there some personality disorders? Were they antisocial? Did they rage out? Did they have extreme strong emotions, sexual desires? Is it possible that the chemicals or the genetic makeup of their brain helped to initiate those type of behaviors? Okay, intelligence. I mean, where are they at as far as their IQ? Are they slow to think? Do they not process things well? So what's happening on that part? All right, so that's your cerebrum. Here's some more information. Like I said, the cerebrum does so much. So this huge list, don't think you have to memorize it all. What I care more about is that you understand what each part of the cerebrum, okay, does. But in general, you can see understanding language, that's going to be over on this side, the temporal lobes. Motor function, planning, touch, sensation. So your cerebrum does a lot. Okay, so like we said, the cerebellum, known as the small brain, the hindbrain, this pink region. It's in the very back. Okay, I had a cousin who was washing windows and unfortunately had a pretty bad accident, and he fell back off of a 2-story building and damaged his cerebellum. And if you look at it, a lot of that, like I say, controls coordination. So he is, I mean, he can walk, but you cannot ask him to hop on one leg. You cannot ask him to skip. He doesn't have that balance. I mean, he looks like a newborn baby trying to coordinate. So him to walk on a tightrope, not happening. Right? Okay, so that's your cerebellum. Now, something that's pretty cool about your cerebrum, the large portion of your brain, is it is broken up into 2 hemispheres. Okay, you have your right hemisphere and you have your left hemisphere. Now, most of you guys already know this, but your right hemisphere, it's mostly known for your creative, your artistic side. So it's got some different things listed here. Music awareness, left hand control. So your right side of your brain controls your left side. The left side of your brain controls your right side. So just some thoughts there. But some of you guys are thinking, wow, this is so me. I'm a very creative, artistic person. You are more right-brained versus left-brain, language, reasoning, thoughts, logic, science, numbers. You love math. You would be more left-brain, okay? And once again, left brain controls the right side of your body. All right, so just some food for thought for there, okay? All right, so this is where we dive into the different lobes. Now, I am going to ask you, do you need to memorize what these lobes are and what each of them do? All right, so let's just take a look here. So frontal lobe, that is the front of your brain. So your frontal lobe would be here, all right? And then you get to your frontal lobe. Let's just move on to the side. So frontal lobe, temporal lobe is right here. By your temples, that should make sense when you get those rubbed. So you got your frontal lobe, your temporal lobe. And then we're going to go to the very back, okay? And that is directly above your cerebellum. So that's known as your occipital lobe, all right? So we got frontal, temporal, occipital. Now we have this section on top, okay? And that is known as your parietal. Now keep in mind, there's 4 lobes, 4 different types of lobes, but there's 2 of each. So we have frontal, okay? Temporal, occipital, parietal. So there is 2 of each one. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind. And you kind of see a little bit more of a detailed color here. So this whole thing is known as the cerebrum. Here's your cerebellum. There's your brainstem. This section right here, okay, that'd be your frontal lobe. And it gives you some ideas, well, what does your frontal lobe control? Okay, higher intellect, self-control, emotions. In here is where you'd be getting your temporal lobe. Let's look at 8 and 9. Auditory, memory, it's short-term memory, right? Let's go back here to 7, okay? 7, your vision. Now, I told you about my cousin who fell off the 2-story building. Well, he also damaged part of his occipital lobe, and so he is blind in his right eye. So think about it. If he's blind in his right eye, what part of his occipital lobe did he damage? The opposite. So he damaged his left occipital lobe to make him blind in his right eye. All right, then we get up here to that parietal lobe. Well, what is 4 and 5? Sensation, voluntary movement, motor skills. So I know there's more detail here, but just something fun to look at to start processing. All right. Yeah, so that finishes up the first part of what I want you to go through today. And just practice reviewing what these 3 parts are. Okay, and start practicing and memorizing the 4 different lobes of your brain and where they are located. All right, until later.